Hi guys, it's Mrs. Wood. We're back for reading and we're going to learn more about point of view. Happy pajama day. I hope you all are wearing your comfy clothes. I have my Christmas jammies on right now. So I wore these ones because today we're going to be reading a book that happens in the winter time. So I wanted to feel like it was cozy and cold. So I wore my Christmas jammies today. Last week, we talked a lot about point of view. Who can remember what point of view is? Just go ahead and yell it out. Right. I bet some of you used my chart over here. Point of view is who is telling the story. And so we can see a lot about different points of view and tell who is telling the story and how they're feeling. So we said that there are two different types of people who can tell the story. First, we have characters. They're someone who is actually in the story. They are in there. They're part of what's taking place. And then we also have the narrator, which is someone who's not in the story. And there's different words that can help us to know if they're in the story or if they're not. So characters, if they're part of the story, they're going to say like, I am doing this, or me and my mom went here. So they're going to use words like that. If it's a narrator, or it could be a character talking about someone else, but you're going to hear words like he and she and they. Like if I was reading a story that I wasn't a part, it might say, they walked to the beach. I'm not there, so I'm not a part of it. Today we're going to read a book called Owl Moon. And as we read this book, we are going to not only pay attention to who's telling the story, is it a character or is it a narrator, but we're also going to listen to how the character feels. Because point of view tells us who is telling the story, but the important thing of point of view is that it also explains to us how that person or that character is feeling. So we read Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day on Friday. And we talked about that we could see how different characters were feeling throughout the story. So today, when we read Owl Moon, we're going to listen to what is being said, and we're going to use something called evidence to try and determine what that says about the character or the narrator's point of view. So if I was using things and saying that I was slumped over and my eyes were partially closed, and I sighed, what would my point of view be? Probably that I was tired, right? But if I said the character had a big smile on their face and their eyebrows were raised and they were just full of joy, they probably would be excited, right? So we're going to listen to the words here, the evidence, and we're going to be like detectives to try and determine how is the character or the narrator feeling at that time? What's their point of view? All right, this book is called Owl Moon, and it was written by Jane Yolen and illustrated by John Schoner. It was late one winter at night, long past my bedtime, when Pa and I went owling. So I want to stop right here before I continue. Who is telling the story? Right, it's a child, someone who's with their pa, because we know that the evidence says it was long past my bedtime. Children have bedtimes, right? So we know it was long past their bedtime. And it says Pa and I went owling. We hear those words, my and I. That tells us that it's a character in the story. So now we know who's telling the story. Let's see if we can start to figure out how that character feels and what their point of view is. It was late one winter night, long past my bedtime, when Pa and I went owling. There was no wind. The trees stood still as giant statues, and the moon was so bright. The sky seemed to shine. Somewhere behind us, a train whistle blew long and low, like a sad, sad song. I could hear it through the woolen cap Pa had pulled down over my ears. A farm dog answered the train, and then a second dog joined in. They sang out trains and dogs for a real long time, and when their voices faded away, it was as quiet as a dream. We walked on towards the woods, Pa and I. Our feet crunched over the crisp snow, and little gray footprints followed us. Pa made a long shadow, but mine was short and round. I had to run after him every now and then to keep up, and my short round shadow bumped after me. But I never called out. If you go owling, you have to be quiet. That's what Pa always says. I had been waiting to go owling with Pa for a long, long time. All right, so here there is some evidence that tells me how the child is feeling about going owling. Right here, it says, I had been waiting to go owling with Pa for a long, long time. That tells me that this child is probably very excited and has been anticipating going owling. So they're probably going to do whatever they have to make sure they do it the right way. We reached the line of pine trees, black and pointy against the sky, and Pa held up his hand. I stopped right where I was and waited. He looked up, as if searching the stars, as if reading a map up there. The moon made his face into a silver mask. Then he called, "Ooh, ooh, 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 ooh," the sound of the great horned owl. "Ooh, ooh, 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 ooh." So even though the boy is telling the story right now, we can start to see the point of view of his father. His father is very experienced with this. He knows what he's doing. First, we saw that the child had waited a really long time to go owling. So we know that Pa must do this a lot. But now we see that he knows what sound to make. He knows where to look. So he is experienced. The child is not. So the child's depending on Pa to show him what to do. Again, he called out. And then again. After each call, he was silent. And for a moment, we both listened. But there was no answer. Pa shrugged, and I shrugged. If someone shrugs, what does that usually mean? Right. It might mean, I don't know, or I don't care. So do you think maybe they're just thinking, oh, there's no owl here, let's keep going? Yeah, they're saying, you know what, didn't work this time, let's not give up. I was not disappointed. Hey, we were right, he wasn't disappointed. My brothers all said, sometimes there's an owl, and sometimes there isn't. We walked on. I could feel the cold as if someone's icy hand was palm down on my back. And my nose and the tops of my cheeks felt cold and hot at the same time. How is the child feeling now? Right, it's really cold out there. Their nose and cheeks are cold. They said that they could feel the cold. Their icy hand felt like it was on their back. So he's feeling really cold. But I never said a word. If you go owling, you have to be quiet and make your own heat. We went into the woods. The shadows were the blackest things I had ever seen. They stained the white snow. My mouth felt fury, for the scarf over it was wet and warm. I didn't ask what kinds of things hide behind black trees in the middle of the night when you go owling. You have to be brave. So he's saying you have to be brave, but we can see it's kind of scary. There's shadows and there's really black things. Like it's really dark and black from the trees. He can feel the warm breath over his mouth, but he's being brave. Then we came to a clearing in the dark woods. The moon was high above us. It seemed to fit exactly over the center of the clearing, and the snow below it was whiter than the milk in a cereal bowl. I sighed, and Papa held up his hand at the sound. I put my mittens over my scarf over my mouth and listened hard. And then Pa called, "Hoo, hoo, 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 hoo." I listened and looked so hard my eyes hurt, and my eyes got cloudy with the cold. Pa raised his face to call out again, but before he could open his mouth, an echo came threading its way through the trees. "Hoo, hoo, 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 hoo." Pa smiled back. Oh, how do you think Pa is feeling right now? Yes, he's excited. He's smiling. Why do you think he's smiling? Right, a sound just called back. What do you think that is? Oh, let's see if you're right. Let's see if it's an owl. Then Pa called back. "Hoo, hoo, 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 hoo." Just as if he and the owl were talking about supper or about the woods or the moon or the cold. I took my mitten off the scarf, off my mouth, and I almost smiled too. The owl's call came closer from high up in the trees on the edge of the meadow. Nothing in the meadow moved. All of a sudden, an owl shadow, part of the big tree shadow, lifted off and flew right over us. We watched silently, with heat in our mouths, the heat of all those words we had not spoken. The shadow hooted again. Oh, so they're not talking. They're quiet. They're just watching. The child has taken their hand down. They're so excited and anticipating what they're about to see. Pa turned on his big flashlight and caught the owl just as it was landing on a branch. For 1 minute, 3 minutes, maybe even 100 minutes, we stared at each other. Oh, what do you think? How is the child feeling right now? Yeah, those are all really good answers. I think the child is probably amazed, maybe a little scared and excited. All of those things. We see the child is just standing quiet, staring at the owl. Then the owl pumped its great wings and lifted off the branch like a shadow without a sound. It flew back into the forest. "Time to go home," Pa said to me. I knew that I could talk. I could even laugh out loud. But I was a shadow as we walked home. Why do you think the child is so quiet as they walk home? Because now they've already seen the owl, so she could talk. Right. Can't believe what just happened. They just came face to face with an owl. Their owl hunt was successful. When you go owling, you don't need words or warm or anything but hope. That's what Pa says. The kind of hope that flies on silent wings under a shining owl moon. So I really like this book because it's really good at, even though the child is the one telling the whole story, we get to see how the child feels and how the point of view changes throughout. We get to see how Pa feels at times and how the child, without ever saying, we were so excited, or we were discouraged, or we were happy, we were amazed. But just by listening to the evidence, those clues in the words, we can hear what the point of view is. All right, I will see you guys tomorrow, and we will continue to talk about more point of view. Bye.